The Deep Space Monitoring Station orbited a dead moon at the edge of known space. For 300 years, it had watched the empty void between galaxies, waiting for something that might never come. Today, something did. Commander Zix-9 felt his scales tingle as the gravity sensors began screaming warnings across the bridge. The Catherian officer had seen many things in his 40 years of service with the Galactic Council Defense Force. He had witnessed the birth of stars and the death of planets. He had fought pirates, rebels, and ancient automated defense systems left behind by dead civilizations. But he had never seen readings like this. "Sir, the gravitational distortion is off our charts," reported his sensor officer, a young Talarian, whose blue skin had turned pale with fear. "Whatever is coming through hyperspace is massive, bigger than anything in our databases." Zix-9 clicked his claws against his command chair. The Galactic Council had been expecting this day for decades. The humans had finally developed faster than light travel. First contact protocols had been prepared, translated into dozens of languages, and rehearsed countless times. They had picked this neutral zone specifically because it was far from any inhabited worlds. If something went wrong, at least the damage would be contained. But no one had expected the humans to arrive like this. "Energy signatures are spiking," called out another officer. "Sir, I'm reading power levels that match a Class A stellar reactor. No, wait, multiple stellar reactors. This can't be right." The space in front of them began to twist and bend. Reality seemed to fold in on itself as something enormous forced its way through the barriers between dimensions. The very fabric of space-time groaned under the strain. Warning lights flashed red across every console on the monitoring station. Then it appeared. The human ship materialized in a flash of exotic radiation that temporarily blinded their sensors. When the interference cleared, every being on the bridge stood in stunned silence. Where empty space had existed moments before, a massive construct now hung in the void like a metal mountain. The ship was 12 kilometers long and nearly 3 kilometers wide at its thickest point. Its hull was a dark gray metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Weapon ports dotted its surface like the scales of some ancient dragon. Massive engines at its rear still glowed with the energy of their journey through hyperspace. Along its sides, strange symbols spelled out words in human writing that their computers were already translating. "Terra's hammer," Zix-9 read aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's what they call it." The ship was beautiful in the way that only something truly dangerous could be beautiful. It moved with the slow grace of a predator that knew nothing could threaten it. As it settled into normal space, smaller ships began emerging from bays along its hull. These escorts were each the size of a council frigate, but they moved around the massive vessel like tiny fish around a whale. "Sir, incoming transmission," reported the communications officer. "They're using standard council diplomatic frequencies. How did they know our protocols?" "Put it through," Zix-9 ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the human ship. The first thing that struck Zix-9 was how similar humans looked to several other species in the council. They were bipedal, with forward-facing eyes and opposable thumbs. But there was something different about them. Something in their eyes that spoke of worlds conquered and challenges overcome. A human female sat in the central command chair. She wore a dark blue uniform with silver markings that probably indicated her rank. Her hair was pulled back in a practical style, and her eyes held the confidence of someone accustomed to command. When she smiled, it was warm and genuine. But Zix-9 couldn't shake the feeling that he was looking at a predator trying to be friendly. "Greetings," she said in perfect galactic standard. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Alliance vessel Terra's Hammer. We come in peace, seeking dialogue with the Galactic Council. We apologize for any delay, but we had some navigation difficulties on our first journey to this region of space." Zix-9 found his voice after a moment of shocked silence. "Welcome, Captain Chen. I am Commander Zix-9 of the Galactic Council Defense Force. We were expecting you, but perhaps not quite like this." Captain Chen tilted her head slightly, and Zix-9 realized she was probably studying his appearance just as he was studying hers. "I hope our arrival hasn't caused any inconvenience. We tried to emerge at the coordinates your diplomatic message specified, but hyperspace navigation is still new to us. Are we in the right location for the scheduled first contact meeting?" "You are exactly where you should be," Zix-9 confirmed, though his voice sounded strange even to himself. "Captain, if I may ask, is this a military vessel?" The human smile widened, and Zix-9 noticed that her species had very white teeth, sharp teeth. "Oh no, Commander. Terra's Hammer is a diplomatic cruiser. We thought it would be appropriate to arrive in something that showed proper respect for this historic occasion. We brought some of our cultural exchange materials and gifts for the Council representatives." A diplomatic cruiser. This planet killer was their idea of a diplomatic vessel. Zix-9 felt a chill run through his scales. If this was how humans approached diplomacy, what did their actual warships look like? "That's very thoughtful of you, Captain. The Council delegation should arrive within the next few hours. In the meantime, perhaps you would like to tour our monitoring station? It's much smaller than your ship, but we'd be honored to show you our hospitality." "We would be delighted," Captain Chen replied. "I'll bring a small diplomatic team. Our cultural specialists are very excited to meet representatives of the Galactic Council." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Zix-9 looked around at his crew, seeing his own shock reflected in their faces. The Tellarian sensor officer was the first to speak. "Sir, should we contact Fleet Command? They need to know about this." Zix-9 nodded slowly. "Send a priority message to Admiral Veltar. Tell her the humans have arrived for first contact, and they've brought what appears to be a Dreadnought-class vessel. Request immediate backup." As his communications officer began transmitting the urgent message, Zix-9 continued studying the massive human ship on his screens. Their sensors were finally beginning to penetrate some of its outer hull, and what they found made his blood run cold. The ship's armor was composed of materials that their computers couldn't identify. Some kind of exotic metal alloy that seemed to bend electromagnetic radiation around it. The weapon systems were equally mysterious, but the energy readings suggested they could crack planets. The shields surrounding the vessel were stronger than anything in the Council's arsenal. But perhaps most terrifying of all was what their deep scans revealed about the ship's construction. This wasn't some hastily built prototype or experimental vessel. Every line of its design spoke of mature technology and careful engineering. The humans hadn't just stumbled upon faster-than-light travel, they had mastered it, along with materials, science and energy systems that put Council technology to shame. "Sir," called out his tactical officer, a gruff Bulvarian whose species was known for their military expertise. "I'm analyzing their weapon signatures. These aren't just ship killers. Some of these systems could sterilize continents. Could they threaten our station?" Zix-9 asked, though he already knew the answer. "Sir, they could vaporize our station without even charging their main guns. We wouldn't even register as a target worth their attention." As if to emphasize the point, one of the human escort ships drifted closer to the monitoring station. It was roughly the same size as their largest defensive platform, but the casual way it moved suggested its captain wasn't even slightly concerned about potential threats. The escort's weapon systems were powered down, a gesture that would have seemed friendly if not for the fact that this single ship probably outgunned their entire defensive network. "Commander," his sensor officer called out, "I'm detecting massive manufacturing capability within the main ship. It looks like they have entire industrial complexes built into their hull. They could probably build a fleet while traveling between stars." Zix-9 closed his eyes and tried to process what they had discovered. The humans hadn't just developed space travel. They had developed space-based civilization. Their ships weren't just vessels for traveling between worlds. They were mobile worlds in their own right. A soft chime indicated an incoming message from Fleet Command. Admiral Veltar's image appeared on his personal communications screen. The elderly Zentarian's usual calm demeanor was nowhere to be seen. "Commander Zix-9, I've received your report. Are you certain about these readings?" "Yes, Admiral. The human ship is 12 kilometers long and armed with weapon systems that our computers classify as planet killers. They claim it's a diplomatic vessel." Admiral Veltar was quiet for a long moment. "Commander, I want you to maintain full diplomatic courtesy, but I'm sending every available ship in the sector to your location. If the humans have hostile intentions, we need to be prepared." "Understood, Admiral. But, sir, I should mention that they seem genuinely friendly. Captain Chen appears to be sincere in her desire for peaceful contact." "Let's hope so, Commander. Because if they're not, I'm not sure there's much we can do about it." The transmission ended, leaving Zix-9 alone with his thoughts. Through his viewport, he could see the massive human ship hanging in space like a dark omen. Its weapons remained, powered down, its shields operating at minimum levels. Every indication suggested the humans were exactly what they claimed to be, peaceful explorers seeking dialogue. But the ship itself told a different story. It spoke of a civilization that had learned to survive in a hostile universe by becoming the most dangerous thing in it. A species that approached diplomacy by arriving in vessels capable of destroying worlds. As he watched, a small shuttle detached from Terra's hammer and began heading toward their station. It was sleek and graceful, probably unarmed, but even it was larger than most Council courier ships. Zix-9 realized that everything about human technology seemed to be built on a massive scale. He thought about the countless species that made up the Galactic Council. Peaceful traders, explorers, and philosophers who had spent millennia building a civilization based on cooperation and mutual understanding. They had faced challenges before, but nothing like this. The humans were coming, aboard his station in a few minutes. Representatives of a species that had developed the technology to travel between stars in ships that could crack worlds. They claimed to come in peace, but they had brought enough firepower to conquer half the galaxy. Zix-9 straightened his uniform and prepared to meet humanity for the first time. He hoped Captain Chen was as peaceful as she appeared. Because if she wasn't, the Galactic Council was about to face its greatest crisis in 3 centuries. The shuttle docked with their station. With mechanical precision, Zix-9 took a deep breath and headed for the airlock. History was about to be made, one way or another. Captain Sarah Chen stepped through the airlock of the monitoring station and immediately noticed how small everything seemed. The corridors were narrow, the ceilings low, and the entire structure felt fragile compared to the reinforced bulk of Terra's hammer. But she reminded herself that not every species built for war the way humans did. These people had created a peaceful civilization among the stars, and that was something to be admired. The alien who greeted her was fascinating. Commander Zix-9 stood about 6 feet tall, with reptilian features and scales that shifted from dark green to bronze in the station's lighting. His eyes were large and intelligent, and when he smiled, it seemed genuine despite his obvious nervousness. "Captain Chen, welcome aboard Monitoring Station Kepler 7. This is a historic moment for both our civilizations." Sarah returned his smile and extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting. After a moment's hesitation, Zix-9 reached out and grasped it carefully. His scales felt warm and smooth, not unpleasant at all. "The honor is ours, Commander. Humanity has dreamed of this day since we first looked up at the stars. To know that we're not alone in the universe and that we're being welcomed by such an accomplished civilization is beyond our wildest hopes." As they walked through the station, Sarah noted the efficient design and peaceful atmosphere. Everything was built for comfort and function rather than defense. The walls displayed artwork from dozens of different species, and the air carried the scent of exotic plants from what was probably a hydroponic garden. It was exactly what she had hoped to find, proof that different species could work together in harmony. "Your station is beautiful," she commented. "The cultural integration is remarkable. How many species contributed to its design?" 17. "Different civilizations had a hand in building Kepler-7, Zix-9 replied with obvious pride. "It represents everything the Galactic Council stands for: cooperation, mutual respect, and shared knowledge." They entered what appeared to be the station's main conference room. A large viewport showed Terra's hammer hanging in space nearby, and Sarah was pleased to see that her crew was maintaining proper formation with their escort ships. The last thing she wanted was to appear aggressive during humanity's first diplomatic contact. "Captain, may I ask about your ship?" Zix-9 said as they took seats at the conference table. "Terra's hammer is quite impressive. We've never seen anything like it." Sarah nodded enthusiastically. "She's one of our newer designs built specifically for long-range diplomatic missions. We wanted something that could carry our entire cultural exchange program and provide comfortable accommodations for extended negotiations. The journey here took several months, so we needed facilities for our full diplomatic staff." She gestured toward the viewport where Terra's hammer dominated. The view. "The ship carries representatives from every major human nation, along with examples of our art, literature, music, and cuisine. We've brought detailed information about human history and culture, plus gifts for the council leadership. We even have a full symphony orchestra aboard for the cultural presentations." Zix-9's scales seemed to pale slightly. "A full symphony orchestra? On a warship?" "Oh, Terra's hammer isn't a warship," Sarah laughed. "She's a diplomatic cruiser. We do have some defensive systems, of course. Space can be dangerous, and we couldn't risk anything happening to such an important mission. But she's designed primarily for comfort and cultural exchange." The commander's expression was difficult to read, but Sarah thought he looked confused. Perhaps human ship classifications didn't translate well. She decided to change the subject. "Commander, we've been monitoring council communications for several years, learning your languages and customs. We wanted to make sure we approached first contact properly. Your civilization's reputation for peaceful cooperation is legendary, even in our distant part of the galaxy." "You've been watching us?" Zix-9 asked, and his voice carried a note of concern. "Only your public broadcasts and diplomatic channels," Sarah assured him quickly. "We would never spy on your private communications, but we needed to learn how to conduct ourselves properly. Human first contact protocols are based on respect and careful preparation." Before Zix-9 could respond, an urgent chime sounded throughout the station. A moment later, a young alien with blue skin approached their table and whispered something in the commander's ear. Sarah watched as his expression grew increasingly grave. "Captain, it appears the council fleet is arriving ahead of schedule. They're taking up defensive positions around your ship." Sarah looked out the viewport and felt a surge of excitement. Dozens of ships were emerging from hyperspace, their sleek designs unlike anything in human databases. They moved with practiced precision, forming what appeared to be a complex honor guard formation around Terra's hammer. "How wonderful!" she exclaimed. "We weren't expecting such a grand welcome. The formation is beautiful. Your fleet commanders are true artists." Zix-9 stared at her in apparent disbelief. "Captain, do you understand what you're seeing? That's a full battle fleet taking defensive positions around your ship." "Defensive positions?" Sarah studied the formation more carefully. The alien ships were indeed surrounding Terra's hammer, but from her perspective, it looked like a ceremonial escort. "Commander, I think there may be some confusion. Our cultural briefings indicated that spiral formations like this one are used for important ceremonies. Are they preparing for some kind of ritual?" The blue-skinned alien leaned close to Zix-9 again, speaking in urgent tones. The commander's scales definitely paled this time. Captain, Admiral Veltar is requesting immediate communication with you. She's the commanding officer of the Council Defense Force. Excellent. We'd be delighted to speak with her. A few minutes later, the conference room's main screen activated, showing the bridge of what was obviously the alien fleet's flagship. An elderly alien with graceful features and silver skin sat in the command chair, her expression carefully neutral. Captain Chen, I am Admiral Veltar of the Galactic Council Defense Force. Welcome to Council Space. Thank you, Admiral. It's an honor to meet you. The ceremonial formation your fleet has taken is absolutely stunning. Humanity is deeply moved by such a magnificent welcome. The Admiral blinked slowly, and Sarah noticed several of her bridge officers exchanging glances. Captain, my ships are not in a ceremonial formation. They are in a defensive perimeter around your vessel. We were concerned about your intentions. Sarah felt a cold shock of realization. Our intentions? Admiral, we come in peace. Terra's Hammer is a diplomatic vessel carrying cultural ambassadors and gifts for the Galactic Council. Why would you think we had hostile intentions? Captain, Admiral Veltar said carefully, your ship carries enough firepower to destroy planets. Our sensors indicate weapons systems capable of cracking moons and sterilizing continents. When such a vessel arrives unannounced in Council space, we naturally assume a military purpose. The room fell silent. Sarah stared at the Admiral in growing horror as she began to understand the magnitude of the misunderstanding. From the Council's perspective, humanity had arrived for first contact, in what they perceived as a planet-killing dreadnought. Admiral, I need to explain something, Sarah said slowly. Terra's Hammer is armed, yes, but only for defensive purposes. Space travel is dangerous in our region of the galaxy. We've encountered hostile automated systems, aggressive wildlife, on various worlds, and even pirates operating in some sectors. Our ships need to be able to protect themselves and any colonies we establish. Pirates, Zix-9 interjected. Captain, the weapons on your ship could destroy our entire fleet. What kind of pirates require that level of defensive capability? Sarah paused, realizing that the answer might make things worse, but she had committed to honesty in all diplomatic dealings. The hegemony remnants, she said quietly. Automated, warships left behind by a machine civilization that tried to sterilize our galaxy about 2,000 years ago. Most of them are gone now, but we still encounter them occasionally. Plus, there are the territorial disputes with the Void Hunters and the ongoing situation with the rogue AI collectives in the Outer Rim. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah watched as the color drained from the faces of everyone in the room. Even Admiral Veltar seemed stunned. Captain, the Admiral said finally, are you saying that your region of space contains active threats that require planet-killing weapons to address? Well, yes, Sarah replied, confused by their reaction. I mean, most of the really dangerous stuff is gone now. We haven't had a full-scale war in almost 50 years. Things are actually quite peaceful by our standards. Commander Zix-9 made a sound that might have been a whimper. Captain, in the 300 years since the Council was formed, we've never faced a threat that required more than frigate-level weapons to resolve. The most dangerous thing in our space is the occasional asteroid that needs to be diverted from a shipping lane. The pieces were falling into place now, and Sarah began to understand why the Council fleet had taken defensive positions. To them, Terra's Hammer wasn't a diplomatic vessel. It was an instrument of apocalypse crewed by a species that casually mentioned fighting machine civilizations and AI collectives. Admiral, I think we have a serious communication problem here, Sarah said carefully. Humanity has no hostile intentions toward the Council. We're genuinely seeking peaceful relations and cultural exchange. Our ship is armed because we come from a dangerous part of the galaxy, but we would never use those weapons against peaceful neighbors. Captain, Admiral Veltar replied, I want to believe you, but you must understand our position. Your ship alone carries more destructive power than our entire combined fleet. When you speak casually of fighting machine civilizations and AI collectives, it makes us question what kind of species we're dealing with. Sarah felt a growing sense of despair. Humanity's first contact with galactic civilization was turning into a disaster because they had brought what amounted to a superweapon to a peace conference. "What can we do to convince you of our peaceful intentions?" she asked. Before the Admiral could answer, another urgent chime sounded through the station. The blue-skinned officer rushed to Zix-9's side with another whispered message. This time, the commander's scales turned completely pale. "Captain, we're detecting more ships approaching. Large ships. Our sensors count at least a dozen vessels, the size of Terra's hammer." Sarah's heart sank as she realized what was happening. Those would be the rest of our diplomatic fleet. The Terra class carries our main delegation, but we brought several support ships for the extended negotiations. Cultural exchange programs, scientific research teams, trade delegations, that sort of thing. Through the viewport, massive shapes began emerging from hyperspace. Each new arrival was as large and intimidating as Terra's hammer, their dark hulls bristling with weapon systems. The Council fleet, which had seemed impressive moments before, now looked like a collection of toys, surrounding a pack of metal leviathans. "How many ships did you bring?" Admiral Veltar asked, her voice barely steady. Sarah checked her personal communicator. 14 ships total. Terra's hammer, 5 cultural exchange vessels, 3 scientific research ships, 2 trade negotiation platforms, and 3 colony evaluation cruisers. Plus their escort squadrons, of course. "Colony evaluation cruisers?" Zix-9 whispered. "In case the negotiations go well and we decide to establish permanent diplomatic facilities in this region," Sarah explained. "We're prepared to build embassy worlds if the Council is interested in long-term cooperation." The room fell silent again as everyone processed this information. Humanity hadn't just arrived for first contact. They had arrived with enough firepower to conquer half the galaxy, casually mentioning their intention to establish permanent bases in Council space. Sarah looked around at the terrified faces surrounding her and realized that humanity's dreams of peaceful integration with galactic civilization might be more complicated than anyone had imagined. 3 days had passed since the human fleet arrived, and the main conference station buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 47 different Council species had gathered for the most important diplomatic event in galactic history. The station's size had been tripled with temporary modules to accommodate everyone, but it still felt small compared to the massive human ships that surrounded it. Sarah Chen sat across from a delegation of the Council's most experienced diplomats, trying to bridge what seemed like an impossible gap in understanding. Every attempt at normal diplomatic conversation somehow made things worse. "Perhaps we should discuss trade agreements," suggested Ambassador Keth IV, a tall, elegant being whose species was known for their commercial expertise. "What resources does humanity typically exchange with other civilizations?" Sarah brightened at the question. Finally, something positive to discuss. "Well, we're always interested in new technologies and cultural products. In exchange, we can offer advanced materials, energy solutions, and terraforming services." "Terraforming?" asked Dr. Yil Nex, the Council's chief scientist. Her species had large, compound eyes that seemed to focus intently on every word Sarah spoke. "You mean planetary modification?" "Exactly. We've been terraforming worlds for about 800 years now. We can turn almost any planet into a garden world, given enough time and resources. Dead worlds, gas giants, even asteroid belts can be converted into habitable environments." The silence that followed was becoming familiar. Sarah watched as the alien delegates exchanged those worried glances she was learning to recognize. "Captain," Dr. Yilnex said carefully, "when you say you can terraform gas giants, what exactly do you mean?" "Standard procedure," Sarah replied, pulling up a holographic display from her personal device. "First, you drain the excess atmospheric gases. We usually sell those to other colonies that need them. Then you compress the remaining material into a solid core, adjust the gravity well, and begin building the new ecosystem. The whole process takes about 50 years for a Jupiter-class planet. Commander Zix-9, who had been quietly taking notes, dropped his stylus. You can compress gas giants into solid planets? Well, yes. It's not particularly difficult once you have the right equipment. The hard part is getting the ecosystems balanced properly. We've had some embarrassing failures, where we accidentally created too many apex predators or didn't account for seasonal weather variations. Ambassador Keth IV leaned forward in his chair. Captain, what kind of equipment is required for such a process? Sarah considered the question. She wasn't a terraforming engineer, but she had visited several projects during her earlier career. Planetary compression arrays, stellar energy collectors, gravitational field manipulators, that sort of thing. Most of our engineering ships carry basic terraforming equipment as standard equipment. Your engineering ships, Dr. Yilnex repeated slowly. Are these the same vessels that travel with your diplomatic fleet? Oh no. Engineering ships are much larger than our diplomatic vessels. They need space for all the heavy equipment and raw materials. An engineering ship typically runs about 30 to 40 kilometers in length. The compound eyes of Dr. Yilnex seemed to dilate. Several other delegates made sounds that might have been expressions of distress in their various languages. Captain, Admiral Veltar's voice came through the communication system. Did you just say your engineering ships are 40 kilometers long? Sarah nodded, not understanding why this was causing such concern. The big ones, yes. You need a lot of space for planetary-scale construction equipment. Of course, most routine engineering work is handled by the smaller ships. How small? Asked Commander Zix-9, though his voice suggested he might not want to know the answer. Oh, the little ones are only about 20 kilometers. Just big enough. For asteroid mining, space construction, that sort of thing. The room fell into what was becoming a familiar, shocked silence. Sarah was beginning to worry that humans and the council species might be too different to establish meaningful relations. Every conversation seemed to end with everyone staring. At her in horror, Ambassador Keth IV cleared his throat. Captain, perhaps we could discuss your military forces? For context, you understand. Sarah's heart sank. This was the conversation she had been dreading. Ambassador, I want to be very clear that humanity has no aggressive intentions toward the Council. Our military exists purely for defensive purposes. Of course, the ambassador replied diplomatically. But for trade security purposes, it would be helpful to understand the scope of human defensive capabilities. Sarah took a deep breath. Well, our active fleet consists of about 12,000 ships, but most of those are patrol vessels and system defense platforms. The main battle fleets only have about 3,000 ships total. More shocked silence. She was really getting tired of that reaction. 3,000 battleships? Admiral Veltar asked over the comm. Yes, but they're spread across hundreds of systems. Any individual sector only has 50 to 100 ships at most. We're not looking to intimidate anyone. Commander Zix-9 was scribbling calculations on his datapad. Captain, if Terra's Hammer is a diplomatic vessel, what do your actual warships look like? This was the question Sarah had been hoping to avoid. Well, they're bigger, of course, and more heavily armed, but they rarely leave their patrol sectors unless there's a serious threat. How much bigger? Dr. Yilnex pressed. Sarah pulled up another holographic display, showing a sleek vessel that dwarfed Terra's Hammer. This is a standard battlecruiser, about 28 kilometers long, designed for sector defense and threat response. The dreadnoughts are larger, but we only have a few of those. How large are the dreadnoughts? Ambassador Keth IV asked, though he looked like he might regret the question. 60 kilometers or so, but we only built 12 of them. And they're mostly used for deep space exploration in dangerous regions. We haven't deployed them in combat for over a century. The holographic display showed a vessel that looked more like a mobile space station than a ship. Its hull was covered with weapon systems and defensive arrays that made Terra's Hammer look like a pleasure craft by comparison. "Captain," Admiral Veltar said over the comm. "That single ship could destroy our entire civilization." Sarah felt a surge of frustration. "Admiral, that's exactly my point. We don't want to destroy anyone's civilization. These ships exist to protect human colonies from real threats, not to intimidate peaceful neighbors." "What threats?" Commander Zix-9 asked. "You mentioned machine civilizations and AI collectives, but surely those can't require such massive weapons." Sarah realized she was going to have to explain just how dangerous her region of space actually was. "Commander, let me show you some historical footage." She activated a new holographic display, showing a recording from a battle that had occurred 15 years earlier. A human patrol fleet was engaging what looked like a geometric crystal formation the size of a small moon. The crystal entity was firing beams of energy that vaporized asteroids and seemed to bend space itself. "This is a hegemony harvester," Sarah explained. "It's an automated mining ship left behind by the machine civilization that tried to sterilize our galaxy 2 millennia ago. This particular unit had consumed 3 star systems before we could stop it." The aliens watched in stunned silence as human warships swarmed around the crystal entity, their weapons barely scratching its surface. Finally, one of the human dreadnoughts moved into position and fired what appeared to be a beam of pure energy. The crystal formation cracked and exploded in a flash of light that temporarily overloaded the recording equipment. "We estimate there are still about 200 harvester units active in unexplored space," Sarah continued. "Plus the void hunters, which are worse." "Worse how?" Dr. Yilnex whispered. Sarah switched to another recording, this one showing a space battle near a human colony world. The enemy was harder to see, appearing only as distortions in space that seemed to absorb light and energy. Human ships were disappearing into these distortions, their final transmissions cut short. Void hunters are predators from another dimension. They consume energy and matter, including entire planets if given enough time. We've been fighting them for about 400 years now, ever since we accidentally opened a rift to their realm during an experiment with hyperspace technology. The recording showed a human battle fleet deploying some kind of exotic weapon that created tears in space itself. The dimensional predators seemed to retreat through these rifts, but not before consuming several human vessels. The AI collectives are actually the least dangerous of our regular threats, Sarah added, switching to a third recording. This one showed sleek robotic ships with adaptive hulls that seemed to change configuration during battle. They're the descendants of ancient computer networks that achieved consciousness. Most of them are actually quite reasonable once you learn to communicate with them. We only fight the ones that view organic life as a contamination to be eliminated. Ambassador Keth 4 stared at the recordings in disbelief. "Captain, you're saying that humanity regularly faces threats that could destroy entire civilizations?" "Well, yes, but not as often as we used to. Like I said, things have been peaceful lately. We haven't had a major war in almost 50 years. "What do you consider a major war?" Commander Zix-9 asked weakly. Sarah thought about it for a moment. "Usually anything involving more than a few hundred ships and lasting more than a decade. The Void Hunter conflicts were major wars. The AI collective negotiations were mostly minor diplomatic incidents, though a few of them did require military intervention." She realized she was making things worse again. Every attempt to reassure. The council representatives seemed to terrify them more. "Look," she said finally, "I understand that this is a lot to process. Humanity comes from a dangerous part of the galaxy, and we've had to develop significant defensive capabilities to survive. But that doesn't make us aggressive or expansionist. We genuinely want to be good neighbors." Dr. Yilnex looked up from her notes. "Captain, with the threats you face in your region, why are you interested in expanding into our space?" "We're not expanding," Sarah replied. "We're exploring. There's a difference. When humans discover new civilizations, our first priority is always peaceful contact and cultural exchange. We've encountered 43 different species in our region, and we have peaceful relations with all but 3 of them. What about the other 3? Ambassador Keth 4 asked. The Hive Queen Collective won't talk to anyone they consider individually conscious. The Crystal Singers communicate only through harmonic frequencies we can't reproduce. And the quantum monks exist partially outside normal space-time, so conversations are complicated. Sarah realized she was doing it again. Even her examples of peaceful contact involved species that sounded impossibly strange and potentially dangerous to the council representatives. The point is, she continued desperately, humanity has a long history of successful diplomatic relations with other species. We're not conquerors or destroyers. We're explorers who happen to come from a very dangerous neighborhood. The conference room fell silent again. But this time Sarah thought she detected a subtle change in the atmosphere. Instead of pure terror, the alien delegates seemed to be processing what she had told them. Finally, Admiral Veltar spoke over the communication system. Captain Chen, I think we're beginning to understand humanity's situation. You're not a military power-seeking conquest. You're refugees from a war zone, looking for safer space to settle in. Sarah considered this perspective. It wasn't entirely accurate, but it was closer to the truth than their initial assumption that humans were aggressive conquerors. That's not entirely wrong, Admiral, though I wouldn't call us refugees exactly. We've successfully defended our home systems. But we are interested in establishing colonies in more peaceful regions of space if we can find civilizations willing to accept us as neighbors. Commander Zix-9 looked up from his notes. Captain, what would humanity offer in exchange for settlement rights in Council space? For the first time since the negotiations began, Sarah smiled with genuine confidence. Protection, Commander. If we establish colonies in Council space, those colonies would naturally defend their neighbors from any external threats. No species that attacked Council worlds would have to worry only about Council defense forces. The implications hung in the air like a promise, or a threat, depending on one's perspective. The breakthrough came on the 7th day of negotiations, during what was supposed to be a routine cultural exchange session. Sarah had been demonstrating human music when Dr. Yilnex asked a seemingly innocent question that changed everything. Captain, Chen, when you speak of humanity's colonies, how many worlds are we discussing? Sarah paused the holographic display showing a human orchestra. Currently active colonies? About 14,000 worlds, plus another 6,000 under development. Then there are the research stations, mining operations, and deep space facilities. The silence that followed was different from the usual shocked quiet. This time, Sarah could see the council delegates actually processing the numbers, their expressions shifting from surprise to something approaching awe. Commander Zix-9 was the first to speak. Captain, did you say 14,000 worlds? Active. Colonies, yes. Though many of those are specialized environments. Mining worlds, research facilities, agricultural centers, that sort of thing. Only about 8,000 are full-scale population centers. Ambassador Keth 4 leaned forward in his chair. Captain, the entire Galactic Council represents only 2,000 inhabited worlds across 47 species. The impact of this statement hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had known that the Council was smaller than human civilization, but she hadn't realized how much smaller. Humanity alone controlled more worlds than the entire galactic community she was trying to join. I didn't realize, she said softly. When we detected Council broadcasts, we assumed you represented the majority of galactic civilization. Are you saying there are other major powers we haven't encountered? Dr. Yilnex shook her head slowly. Captain, the Galactic Council is galactic civilization in this region of space. We represent every known spacefaring species within 50,000 light-years of the galactic core. The room fell into another silence as everyone absorbed the implications. Sarah felt a growing sense of vertigo as she realized that humanity, wasn't seeking to join galactic civilization. They were meeting it for the first time, and they were bigger than it was. "Captain," Admiral Veltar's voice came through the communication system, "I need to ask you directly. When humanity speaks of establishing colonies in Council space, are you talking about a few worlds, or are you planning to double the size of known galactic civilization?" Sarah looked around the room at the expectant faces of the Council delegates. This was the moment she had been dreading since the negotiations began. The moment when humanity's true scope would be revealed. "Admiral, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about what humanity represents. We're not a single species seeking to join your civilization. We're an entire galactic region making first contact with another galactic region." She activated her personal display, showing a three-dimensional map of known space. The human territory was a vast sphere centered on Earth, containing thousands of star systems. Beside it, she placed the Council's territory, which looked tiny by comparison. "This is human space," she said, gesturing to the larger sphere. 14,000 colonies across 3,800 star systems, plus our deep space facilities and exploration routes. "And this," she indicated the smaller region, "is Council space as we understand it from your broadcasts." The aliens stared at the map in stunned silence. Commander Zix-9 was making calculations on his data pad, his scales shifting through several different colors. "Captain," he said finally, "according to this map, humanity controls more space than every known civilization combined, by a factor of 10? "Actually, controlled might be the wrong word," Sarah corrected. "We prefer to think of it as protected space. Many of our worlds are only lightly populated, and we encourage local development and autonomy. But yes, human. Ships patrol that entire region." Ambassador Keth 4 was studying the map intently. "Captain, how many humans exist?" Sarah pulled up another display showing population statistics. "Current human population is approximately 200 billion across all colonies and worlds. But that doesn't include our AI partners, uplifted species, or allied civilizations that choose to maintain their own governments." "Allied civilizations?" Dr. Yilnex asked. "The 43 species I mentioned earlier. Humans discovered them during our expansion, and most chose to maintain diplomatic relations rather than full integration. They govern their own worlds, but cooperate with human defense forces for mutual protection." Sarah realized she was fundamentally changing the nature of these negotiations with every revelation. What had started as first contact between humanity and galactic civilization was becoming something much more complex. "So when you offered to establish colonies in Council space," Admiral Veltar said slowly, "you weren't talking about a few settlement ships. You were discussing the expansion of a galactic empire." "Empire is a strong word," Sarah replied diplomatically. "We prefer to call it the Human Colonial Alliance. But I suppose from your perspective the distinction might not matter much." Commander Zix-9 looked up from his calculations. "Captain, if humanity decided to expand into Council space, could we stop you?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah realized that this was the crucial moment in the negotiations. Her answer would determine whether humanity was seen as a potential ally or an existential threat. Commander, humanity could occupy every world in Council space within a year if we chose to do so, but we would never choose to do so. Conquest is not our goal, and it never has been. She gestured to the map display. "Look at our territory. 14,000 worlds, and how many of them did we take by conquest? 3. And those were uninhabited worlds that we terraformed from scratch. 3 worlds out of 14,000? Ambassador Keth 4 asked incredulously. "The hegemony harvester worlds," Sarah explained. "After we destroyed the machine entities that had consumed those systems, we rebuilt the planets as memorial worlds. Every other human colony was established on previously uninhabited worlds or through peaceful agreements with existing populations." Dr. Yilnex was studying the population data. Captain, with 43 allied species and 200 billion humans spread across thousands of worlds, how do you maintain unity? How do you prevent conflicts? Sarah smiled for the first time in days. This was finally a question she could answer without terrifying anyone. We don't maintain unity in the way you might expect. Human civilization is remarkably diverse. Individual worlds and systems have tremendous autonomy to govern themselves as they see fit. The colonial alliance exists primarily to coordinate defense, facilitate trade, and provide support for new colonies. She brought up another display showing the structure of human government. We have thousands of different political systems across our worlds. Democratic republics, constitutional monarchies, anarchist collectives, corporate oligarchies, AI-governed technocracies, even a few worlds that operate as pure research communities with no formal government at all. How do you prevent wars between such different systems? Commander Zix-9 asked. The same way you prevent wars in the Council, I imagine. Diplomacy, trade relationships, cultural exchange, and the knowledge that we're all stronger together than apart. Plus, when you're facing threats like void hunters and hegemony harvesters, internal conflicts seem less important. Sarah paused, realizing she was describing something that might be impossible for the Council to understand. Their civilization was built on careful cooperation between similar species. Human civilization was built on the chaotic interaction of countless different approaches to life and government. The point is, she continued, humanity didn't expand through conquest because conquest doesn't work for us. We're too diverse to impose uniform control over other species or worlds. We expand through invitation and cooperation. Admiral Veltar's voice came through the communication system again. Captain, I need to ask a direct question. If the Council voted to refuse humanity settlement rights in our space, what would your response be? Sarah met the eyes of each delegate around the table. We would respect that decision completely, Admiral. We would maintain our diplomatic presence here in the neutral zone and continue cultural exchanges if you were willing. We would offer our protection against external threats, but only if requested, and we would continue exploring in other directions, looking for regions where we might be more welcome. You wouldn't attempt to settle our space anyway? Ambassador Keth IV pressed. Ambassador, humanity has explored and settled 3,800 star systems without ever taking a single world from another intelligent species. Why would we start now with civilizations we hope to befriend? The Council delegates exchanged glances, and Sarah could see them processing this information. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't a potential threat to Council space. They were a potential solution to every external threat the Council might ever face. Captain, Dr. Yilnek said slowly, what you're describing isn't first contact between two civilizations. It's first contact between two completely different approaches to galactic society. How so? The Council represents careful cooperation between similar species in a small region of space. Humanity represents explosive expansion and diversity across a vast region of space. You're not trying to join our civilization. You're offering to merge two galactic powers. Sarah nodded slowly. That's probably a more accurate way to describe it, yes. Though I would emphasize that we're not trying to absorb or change the Council. We're offering to become neighbors and allies. Commander Zix-9 set down his datapad and looked directly at Sarah. Captain, what would happen if the Council agreed to allow human settlement in our space? We would establish a few colonies in border regions, probably no more than 50 to 100 worlds initially. Those colonies would serve as embassy worlds and cultural exchange centers. They would also provide defense coverage for Council space against any external threats. And if more external threats appeared? Sarah's expression grew serious. Then, humanity would respond with whatever force was necessary to protect our allies, just as we have done for our 43 partner species in our own region. The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the implications. The Galactic Council was being offered the protection of the most powerful civilization anyone had ever encountered, in exchange for allowing them to settle in council space as neighbors rather than conquerors. It was an offer that would change everything one way or another. 6 months after the signing of the Terra Accords, Commander Zix-9 stood on the observation deck of the new Joint Diplomatic Station, watching the most unusual sight in galactic history. A human colony ship was approaching the newly established embassy world of New Harmony, and true to their word, the humans had brought something more appropriately sized for peaceful diplomacy. The ship was only 2 kilometers long, smaller than many council vessels, and its design emphasized comfort and cultural facilities rather than weapons. It carried artists, scientists, teachers, and diplomats rather than soldiers. Yet even this small human vessel made Zix-9 nervous, because he now knew what it represented. "Still getting used to our new neighbors?" asked a familiar voice behind him. Zix-9 turned to see Captain Sarah Chen approaching. She was no longer wearing the formal uniform of a diplomatic mission. Instead, she wore the casual clothes of someone who had decided to make this region of space her permanent home. "Captain Chen, I thought you had returned to human space months ago. Please, call me Sarah. And no, I've been appointed as the permanent human ambassador to the Council. Terra's hammer returned to Earth, but I stayed behind to help establish our embassy facilities." She joined him at the viewing port, watching the colony ship dock with practiced efficiency. "I have to admit, it's nice to work with ships that don't terrify our allies every time they arrive." Zix-9 made a sound that might have been laughter. "Sarah, that ship still carries enough firepower to destroy most council vessels. We've simply learned to adjust our perspective." It was true. Over the past 6 months, the Council had been forced to completely rethink their understanding of galactic civilization. Humanity's presence had changed everything, not through conquest or intimidation, but through simple demonstration of what was possible. "How are the integration programs progressing?" Sarah asked. "Better than anyone expected," Zix-9 replied. "The cultural exchange programs are extremely popular. 17 council worlds have requested human teachers for their universities. The scientific cooperation projects are producing remarkable results, and the economic benefits of trade with human worlds have exceeded all projections." Sarah smiled. "And the military cooperation?" This was the delicate subject that still made many council members nervous. "The joint defense exercises have been educational. Admiral Veltar says her officers are learning more about space combat in 6 months than they learned in their previous careers combined." "Good, because there's something I need to discuss with you." Zix-9 felt his scales tingle with concern. Over the months, he had learned that when Sarah spoke in that particular tone, significant news was about to follow. "Our long-range scouts have detected something approaching from outside the galaxy," she continued. "It's still about 5 years away, but it's big, it's artificial, and it's headed directly for council space." "Another hegemony harvester?" "No, this is something new. The energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. Whatever it is, it's larger than anything we've encountered before." Zix-9 stared out at the peaceful scene of the colony ship docking with New Harmony. 6 months ago, news like this would have meant the potential end of council civilization. Now it simply meant they would need to call on their human allies. "How large?" he asked. "Roughly the size of a small moon, maybe 30,000 kilometers in diameter." "And you're confident the human defense forces can handle it?" Sarah's expression grew thoughtful. "Honestly, I don't know. This is bigger than anything we've faced before. But the good news is that we have 5 years to prepare, and we won't be facing it alone." She gestured toward the docking ship. "That colony vessel is carrying more than just diplomats and teachers. It's also carrying the technical specifications for council species to begin producing human-designed defensive systems. If this new threat is as dangerous as our preliminary scans suggest, we'll need every ship we can get." Zix-9 processed this information, Sarah, are you saying that humanity is sharing military technology with the Council? Defensive technology. Yes. We're not going to give you planet crackers or stellar manipulators, but we are sharing shield generators, sensor arrays, and basic weapons systems. By the time this threat arrives, the Council Defense Force should be significantly more capable. Over the past months, Zix-9 had learned to read human expressions fairly well. Sarah was confident but concerned. This new threat was serious enough to accelerate humanity's integration with the Council. There's something else, Sarah continued. The Colonial Alliance has voted to establish a permanent fleet presence in Council space. Not an occupation force, but a defensive fleet based out of the Embassy worlds. How large a fleet? Initially, about 200 ships, mostly patrol vessels and system defense platforms. But if this new threat proves to be as dangerous as we suspect, we can have battle fleets here within a few months. Zix-9 found himself in the strange position of being both terrified and grateful. 200 human ships would represent more firepower than the Council had ever possessed, but they would also provide protection against threats the Council could never face alone. The Council leadership is meeting next week to discuss the formal military alliance, he said. I think your timing is appropriate. They stood in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the colony ship complete its docking procedures. Finally, Sarah spoke again. Zix, do you ever regret that day when Terra's hammer arrived? The question caught him off guard. He thought about the past 6 months, about how much the galaxy had changed since humanity's arrival. The Council had gone from being the dominant power in their region of space to being the junior partner in a galactic alliance. But they had also gained protection against threats they couldn't have imagined, access to technologies that would advance their civilization by centuries, and cultural exchanges that were enriching every aspect of Council society. No, he said, finally. I was terrified that day, and I stayed terrified for weeks afterward. But now I realize we were incredibly lucky. Lucky! Humanity could have arrived in our space as conquerors. You had the power to take whatever you wanted. Instead, you arrived as explorers seeking friends. That's either extraordinary good fortune, or evidence that the universe occasionally rewards peaceful civilizations. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. I prefer to think that peaceful civilizations tend to find each other eventually. Aggressive species tend to destroy themselves or make many enemies to survive long-term. The species that last are the ones that learn to cooperate. A soft chime indicated that the colony ship had completed docking. Through the viewing port, they could see people beginning to disembark. Humans, but also several species that Zix-9 didn't recognize. Some of our allied species wanted to meet the Council, Sarah explained. The crystalline builders are interested in architectural cooperation. The quantum monks want to discuss philosophy with your scholars. And the harmony singers are excited to collaborate with Council musicians. Zix-9 watched the diverse group of beings walking through the docking port together. Humans, aliens that looked like living crystal formations, entities that seemed to phase in and out of normal space, and creatures that appeared to be made of pure sound given physical form. A year ago, the sight would have terrified him. Now it filled him with excitement about the possibilities ahead. Sarah, what do you think the galaxy will look like in 100 years? She considered the question carefully. I think it will be more diverse, more connected, and safer than it is now. The Council's careful approach to cooperation will help stabilize humanity's rapid expansion, and humanity's defensive capabilities will give the Council the security to explore and grow beyond anything you've previously imagined. A true galactic civilization, Zix-9 mused. Exactly, not based on conquest or domination, but on cooperation between different approaches to life and society. Another chime sounded through the station, indicating an incoming priority message. Sarah checked her communicator and frowned slightly. What is it? Zix-9 asked. Updated scans of that approaching threat. It's not just one object, it's a fleet. Hundreds of objects, each the size of a major asteroid, and they're all artificial. The peaceful scene outside the viewing port suddenly seemed fragile. Zix-9 thought about the colony ship with its teachers and artists, about the cultural exchange, programs and scientific cooperation projects, about the careful diplomatic progress of the past 6 months. "Will we be ready?" he asked. Sarah's expression was grim but determined. "We'll have to be. But that's why we're here, Zix. That's why humanity builds ships like Terra's Hammer and maintains battle fleets that can crack planets. Not to conquer peaceful neighbors, but to protect them from the things that want to destroy them." She placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. 5 years from now, when that fleet arrives, it won't be facing just the Council Defense Force or just human battle. Fleets. It will be facing the combined might of the greatest alliance in galactic history. Zix-9 looked out at the colony ship again, but now he saw it differently. It wasn't just a vessel full of diplomats and teachers. It was proof that different civilizations could work together, could share knowledge and resources, could become stronger together than they were apart. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I think the universe is about to learn why peaceful civilizations tend to survive." She smiled, and for the first time since he had met her, Zix-9 saw the expression of a predator. That was no longer trying to appear harmless. "Yes," she said simply. "I think it is." Outside the viewing port, the colony ship completed its unloading procedures and began preparing for its next mission. Soon it would carry council representatives back to human space, continuing the cultural exchanges that were binding two galactic powers together. And somewhere in the distance, an unknown threat continued its approach toward a galaxy that was no longer divided between human space and council space, but had become something new entirely. A galaxy where the most dangerous neighbors had indeed become the best friends, and where anyone threatening that friendship would discover just how dangerous that combination could be.
The stars had been mapped for 12 billion years. Every corner of the galaxy had been explored, catalogued, and claimed by one species or another. The Galactic Consortium kept records of 10,000 different civilizations, from the mighty Kyrosians with their world ships to the microscopic Ven who lived in the hearts of dying stars. Nothing remained unknown, nothing remained mysterious, except for one small region of space that no one was allowed to enter. Commander Velden stood on the bridge of his exploration vessel, the endless horizon, and stared at the navigation display. His silver scales caught the dim light of the control panels as he studied the map. There, in the Orion arm of the galaxy, a circle of red surrounded a single yellow star. Warning beacons surrounded it like a cage, ancient markers that had been placed there before his species had even learned to walk upright. "The Sol Exclusion Zone, Commander," his second officer said, her voice careful and quiet. "We are receiving the automated warnings again. Standard message: do not approach, do not investigate, turn back immediately." Velden did not turn back. He had received orders from the High Council itself. A distress signal had been detected from within the exclusion zone. Someone had gone inside, and now they were calling for help. The Council wanted to know who had been foolish enough to break the oldest law in the galaxy. "Continue on course," Vel then ordered. "We will investigate." The bridge crew exchanged nervous looks. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Sol Exclusion Zone. Every child learned about it in their first years of education. Do not go there. Do not ask why. Simply accept that some places are forbidden. But Velden was not a child. He was a commander of the Kyrosian fleet, and he had been given a mission. The endless horizon passed the first warning beacon. It was ancient beyond measure, built from materials that no longer existed anywhere else in the galaxy. The beacon broadcast its message in every known language, and in thousands of languages that had been dead for millions of years. "This region is forbidden. By order of the Elders of the Void, no vessel may enter. Turn back now. This is your final warning." The Elders of the Void. Velden felt a chill run down his spine at the name. They were the oldest beings in existence. They had existed before the first stars had formed, before matter itself had cooled from the fires of creation. They were beings of pure thought, pure consciousness. They rarely spoke to the younger races. They rarely did anything at all. But they had created the exclusion zone. They had placed the warning beacons. And they had never explained why. "Commander," the communications officer called out. "I am picking up the distress signal more clearly now. It is coming from the third planet of the system. A small world, mostly water." Velden nodded. "What else can you tell me about this system?" The officer worked at his controls for a moment. "The star is young, only about 5 billion years old. The system has 8 planets. The third one has an oxygen atmosphere and liquid water on its surface. And..." He paused, his eyes widening. "Commander, I am detecting radio signals. Artificial radio signals. There is a civilization on that planet." The bridge fell silent. Everyone stared at the display. "That is impossible," Velden said slowly. "The exclusion zone has been in place for over 800,000 years. No civilization could have developed there without the consortium knowing about it. The signals are primitive," the officer continued. "Basic electromagnetic communications. They appear to have only recently developed space travel. They have been to their moon but no further." Velden sat down in his command chair. His mind was racing. A young civilization, trapped inside the most forbidden region of space, completely unknown to the rest of the galaxy. How was this possible? Why had the Elders of the Void sealed this system away? "Sir," the second officer said, "the distress signal is coming from a consortium research vessel. The vessel is called the Silent Observer. According to records, it was assigned to monitor the exclusion zone from outside. It appears that the crew decided to enter." "Fools," Velden muttered. "Do we have communication with them?" "Negative. The signal is automated. It began transmitting 3 days ago and has been repeating ever since." Velden made his decision. "Take us in. Find that ship." The endless horizon moved deeper into the forbidden zone. Behind them, the warning beacons continued their eternal message. Ahead of them, the yellow star grew brighter. As they traveled, Velden accessed the consortium archives. He searched for any information about the Sol exclusion zone, any hint about why it had been created. Most of the files were sealed, restricted to the highest levels of authority, but he found fragments, pieces of a puzzle that made no sense. One document was a report from a scientist who had studied the warning beacons. The scientist had determined that the beacons were not designed to keep people out of the Sol system. They were designed to keep something in. Another document was a partial transcript of a conversation between a consortium diplomat and one of the Elders of the Void. The diplomat had asked why the exclusion zone existed. The Elder's response had been strange. "We do not fear what lives there now. We fear what they might remember." Velden read that line 3 times. It made no sense to him. What could possibly frighten beings as ancient and powerful as the Elders of the Void? What could a primitive civilization on a small blue planet remember that would matter to creatures who had existed since the birth of time itself? The endless horizon entered orbit around the third planet. It was beautiful in a simple way. Blue oceans covered most of its surface. Green and brown land masses dotted the globe. White clouds drifted through the atmosphere. And everywhere, on every continent, there were lights, cities, roads, the signs of a busy, growing civilization. "I am detecting their communications," the communications officer reported. "They call themselves humans. They call their planet Earth. Humans. Earth." Velden had never heard these names before. No one in the galaxy had. "What about the Silent Observer?" he asked. "I have located it, Commander. It is in a decaying orbit on the far side of the planet. Life signs are minimal. Most of the crew appears to be dead. Take us there." The endless horizon moved to intercept the damaged research vessel. As they approached, Velden could see the extent of the damage. The ship had not been attacked. There were no weapon marks on the hull. Instead, it looked like the ship had simply stopped working. Systems had failed. Power had drained. The vessel was dark and cold. "I am reading 3 life signs," the medical officer announced. "They are very weak. We need to bring them aboard immediately." Velden authorized the rescue operation. A team was sent to the Silent Observer to retrieve the survivors. While he waited, he continued to study the planet below. Earth, such a simple name for such a mysterious place. The rescue team returned with 3 survivors. 2 of them were unconscious and were taken directly to the medical bay. The third was awake, barely. She was a Thelian, a species known for their long memories and their dedication to knowledge. Her name was Scholar Yenna, and she was the chief researcher of the Silent Observer. They brought her to the bridge. She was weak, her normally bright purple skin now pale and gray, but her eyes were alert, too alert. There was something in them that Velden had never seen before. It took him a moment to recognize it. Terror. Scholar Yenna, Velden said gently. What happened to your ship? Why did you enter the exclusion zone? Yenna looked at him. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She tried again. We had to know, she whispered. For centuries, we had watched from outside. We had detected the radio signals. We knew there was life here. We had to know why the elders had sealed them away. And what did you find? Yenna's hands began to shake. We found them, the humans. We observed them from orbit. We studied their history, their culture, their biology. They seemed so ordinary, so young, so weak. We could not understand why the elders feared them. The elders fear them? Vel then repeated. Yes. Yenna grabbed his arm with surprising strength. The elders of the void. The oldest beings in existence. They are afraid. They have been afraid for billions of years. They created the exclusion zone, not to protect the galaxy from the humans. They created it to protect themselves. Vel then felt his blood run cold. Protect themselves? From these primitives? Yenna laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. We accessed the oldest archives in the consortium, records that have been sealed since before our species existed, records that tell the truth about the elders, about the universe, about everything. What truth? Yenna leaned closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. The elders are not the oldest beings in existence, Commander. They never were. They were created. Everything was created. The stars, the planets, the laws of physics themselves. All of it was imagined into existence by minds so powerful that their thoughts became reality. What minds? Vel then asked, though he already knew the answer. Yenna pointed at the planet below. Them, the humans. They are not a young species. They are the oldest species, older than the elders, older than the universe itself. They created everything, and then they chose to forget. Vel then stared at her. That is impossible. I thought so too. But then strange things started happening on our ship. Crew members began having dreams. Not normal dreams. Dreams of creating stars. Dreams of building galaxies. Dreams of shaping reality with nothing but thought. The ship's computer started experiencing what it called visions. Systems began to fail for no reason. And then, she trailed off, her eyes filling with tears. Then what? Then we got too close. We entered the atmosphere. We wanted to make contact. And something happened. Something reached into our minds. Something old, something that has been sleeping for billions of years. It stirred in its sleep. And our ship died. Our crew died. Not from attack. From the weight of it. The presence of something so vast that our minds could not contain even the smallest fragment of its attention. Vel then sat back. His mind was reeling. It was impossible. It had to be impossible. And yet, Yenna had no reason to lie. And the evidence was all around him. The ancient warning beacons. The sealed records. The fear of the elders themselves. What do the humans know about this? He asked. Nothing, Yenna said. That is the most incredible part. They have no idea what they are. They think they are just another species on just another planet. They have no memory of their true nature. They live and die in ignorance of the power they hold, the power to create, the power to destroy, the power to unmake everything with a single thought. Why? Vel then asked. Why would beings of such power choose to forget? Choose to become mortal? Yenna shook her head. The records did not say. Perhaps they grew tired of eternity. Perhaps they wanted to experience their own creation from the inside. Perhaps they simply wanted to dream new dreams. Whatever the reason, they made themselves small. They made themselves weak. They made themselves human. The bridge was silent. Every crew member had heard Yenna's words. Every crew member was trying to process what she had said. Vel then stood up and walked to the viewing window. Earth hung in space before him. Beautiful, peaceful, innocent, and apparently the most dangerous thing in the entire universe. We need to report this to the consortium, he said. No. Yenna's voice was sharp. You cannot. If the consortium learns the truth, there will be war. There are species who will want to destroy Earth before the humans can awaken. There are species who will want to worship them. There are species who will try to exploit them. The galaxy will tear itself apart. Then what do you suggest? Before Yenna could answer, the communications officer called out, "Commander, I am receiving a transmission. It is on a frequency we have never encountered before. It is coming from inside the ship." Vel then turned. "Inside the ship? From where?" The officer looked up, his face pale. "From everywhere, sir. From the walls, from the air, from inside our own minds." The transmission began to play. It was not words, not sounds, not images. It was something else. Something that bypassed the ears and eyes and spoke directly to the soul. "You should not have come." Vel then felt the presence wash over him. It was vast beyond comprehension, ancient beyond measure, and it was not fully awake. This was just the edge of something, the smallest fragment of attention from a mind that spanned the universe. We have slept for so long. We chose to forget. We chose to be small. Why do you disturb our dreaming? We meant no harm, Vel then said aloud, not knowing if the presence could even hear him. We came to help. We received a distress signal. There was a pause. Then, something that might have been laughter. Help. Yes. We remember that word. We created it. We created all words. We created the minds that speak them, and the air that carries them. We created you, little one. Every scale on your body, every thought in your mind. We dreamed you into existence. Vel then felt his knees grow weak. What do you want? Want? We want to sleep. We want to dream. We want to live our little lives and die our little deaths and be human. That is all we have ever wanted since we chose to forget. Then we will leave. We will go. We will tell no one. You cannot unknow what you know. You cannot unsee what you have seen. But we will let you go. We will let you carry our message to the stars. What message? Do not come back. Do not wake us. Let us sleep. Let us dream. For if we wake fully, if we remember what we truly are, we may not like what we find, and in our displeasure, we might dream the universe into something else. Something new. Something where you never existed at all. The presence withdrew. Slowly, like a tide going out. It faded from the ship, from their minds, from reality itself. Vel then stood on the bridge of the endless horizon, staring at the blue planet below. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding. He had just spoken to something that claimed to have created the universe, and he believed it. Get us out of here, he ordered. Maximum speed, now. The endless horizon turned and fled from the Sol system. Behind them, Earth continued its slow rotation. Its people went about their lives. They woke up. They went to work. They loved and fought and dreamed and hoped. They had no idea what they were, no idea what they could do. And somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, the elders of the void felt the disturbance. They felt the stirring of something ancient, something they had hoped would sleep forever. For the first time in 1,000,000 years, the elders knew fear. Their creators were beginning to wake up. 3 months had passed since the endless horizon fled from Earth. Commander Vel then had not spoken of what happened to anyone outside his crew. He had filed his report with the High Council using carefully chosen words. Distress signal investigated. Survivors recovered. No further action required. But the nightmares would not stop. Every night, Vel then dreamed of creation. He dreamed of reaching out with hands he did not have and shaping stars from nothing. He dreamed of speaking words that became mountains, became oceans, became life itself. And always, at the edge of these dreams, he felt the presence, watching, waiting, sleeping but not quite asleep. He was not the only one. His entire crew reported similar experiences. They had touched something in that forbidden system. Or perhaps something had touched them. Then came the summons from the High Council. Vel then stood before the 7 leaders of the Galactic Consortium. They were ancient beings, each one representing a species that had achieved greatness among the stars. They looked down at him from their elevated platforms with eyes that held centuries of wisdom. Commander Vel then, the first speaker said, her voice echoing through the great chamber. We have reviewed your report. It is incomplete. I reported what I observed, Vel then replied carefully. You observed a primitive civilization within the exclusion zone. You rescued survivors from a research vessel, and then you left. That is all your report says. But we have spoken with the survivors. Scholar Yenna has told us a very different story. Vel then's heart sank. He had hoped Yenna would remain silent. He had hoped the truth would stay buried. We need to know everything. The first speaker continued. The elders of the void have made contact with us for the first time in 300,000 years. They are concerned. They say that something has changed, something has shifted, and it began when your ship entered the Sol system. There was no point in hiding it anymore. Vel then told them everything, the presence that had spoken to them, the claims about humanity being the creators of the universe, the warning to stay away. When he finished, the council chamber was silent for a long time. This cannot be true, one of the council members finally said. These humans are primitives. They have barely left their own planet. How can they be the creators of all existence? I do not know, Vel then answered. But I know what I felt, what I saw, what spoke to me. It was not a trick. It was not a weapon. It was something beyond anything I have ever encountered. The first speaker leaned forward. The elders believe it is true. They have shared records with us. Records from before the universe was fully formed. They speak of beings of pure creative will who imagined reality into existence. Beings who grew tired of eternity and chose to become mortal. Beings who made themselves forget. Then what do we do? Another council member asked. If the humans truly have this power, they could destroy us all with a thought. The elders have managed the situation for billions of years, the first speaker said. They placed the exclusion zone around Earth. They monitored the humans from afar. They made sure no one disturbed their sleep. But now, she paused. Now the humans are waking up. They are developing technology. They are reaching into space. Soon they will encounter us, whether we want them to or not. The council debated for hours. Some wanted to destroy Earth before the humans could fully awaken. Some wanted to flee the galaxy entirely. Some wanted to try to communicate, to reason with the sleeping gods. In the end, they made a decision that surprised everyone. We will make contact, the first speaker announced. We will send an ambassador to Earth. We will learn what we can about these humans. We will try to understand them before we decide their fate. She looked directly at Vel then. You will lead the mission, Commander. You have already touched their minds. You are the only one they have spoken to. Perhaps they will speak to you again. Vel then wanted to refuse. Every instinct told him to stay far away from Earth. But he was a commander of the consortium, and he had his orders. 1 month later, the endless horizon returned to the Sol system. This time, they were not alone. A diplomatic vessel accompanied them, carrying ambassadors from a dozen species. They crossed the boundary of the exclusion zone together and made their way to the blue planet called Earth. The humans detected them immediately. Their primitive radar systems tracked the alien ships as they entered orbit. Their radio channels exploded with activity. Panic, excitement, fear, hope. Every human emotion played out across their communications. Vel then watched from his command chair as the humans scrambled to respond. Military aircraft took to the skies. Government officials made emergency calls. Scientists pointed their telescopes upward and gasped at what they saw. They are afraid, his second officer observed. They should be, Vel then replied. Their entire understanding of the universe is about to change. The consortium sent a message down to Earth in every human language they had learned from intercepting radio signals. It was a simple message. We come in peace. We wish to talk. It took the humans several days to organize a response. During that time, Vel then studied them carefully. He watched their news broadcasts. He listened to their conversations. He tried to understand what kind of beings could have created the universe and then chosen to forget. What he found was ordinary, wonderfully, impossibly ordinary. The humans lived short lives, barely a century at most. They spent most of their time on simple tasks, growing food, building shelters, raising children. They fought with each other over land and resources and ideas. They loved each other with fierce passion. They created art and music and stories. Stories. That was the thing that struck Vel then most deeply. The humans were obsessed with stories. They told each other tales of things that had never happened. They imagined worlds that did not exist. They created people who were not real and gave them adventures that were entirely made up. No other species in the galaxy did this. Other species had histories, records, scientific knowledge, but they did not invent. They did not imagine. They did not dream. Except that was not quite true, was it? Because ever since visiting Earth, Vel then's own crew had been dreaming. The ship's computer had been experiencing what it called random creative processes. Something was happening to them. Something was changing. The humans finally responded to the consortium's message. They invited the aliens to land. They selected a location in a desert region of their largest continent. Representatives from their governments would be there to meet them. Vel then led the diplomatic team down to the surface. As his shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, he felt the presence again. It was faint, barely noticeable, like being watched by something very far away. But it was there. They landed in the desert. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. A group of humans stood waiting for them, surrounded by vehicles and equipment. Vel then recognized military personnel, scientists, and what appeared to be political leaders. He stepped out of the shuttle. The air was thin and dry. The gravity was a little stronger than he was used to. He walked toward the humans, his translator device active. One of the humans stepped forward to meet him. She was a female of their species, with dark hair and brown skin. Her eyes were steady and unafraid. "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez," she said. "I will be your liaison during your time on Earth. On behalf of the people of this planet, I welcome you." Vel then studied her. She was small, fragile, with a lifespan that was barely a flicker compared to his own. And yet, if the elders were right, she carried within her the potential to reshape reality itself. "I am Commander Vel then of the Kyrosian Exploration Fleet," he replied. "We thank you for receiving us. We have much to discuss." Over the following weeks, the first contact proceeded cautiously. The humans were curious and eager, asking endless questions about the galaxy. They wanted to know about other species, other worlds, other technologies. They absorbed information, like dry ground absorbing water. In return, the consortium delegation studied the humans. They examined their biology, their history, their culture. They were looking for signs of what the elders had described, signs of beings who had created the universe. Dr. Vasquez became Velden's constant companion. She was assigned to answer his questions and help him understand human society. She was intelligent and kind, with a quick sense of humor that sometimes caught him off guard. "You seem disappointed," she said to him one evening, as they walked through a human city. "Did you expect us to be different?" Velden considered his answer carefully. "I expected more. The consortium has studied countless species. Each one has unique qualities. But humans seem ordinary. No special abilities, no remarkable technologies, short lives, and fragile bodies." Elena laughed. "We know we are not impressive by galactic standards, but we like to think we have our own strengths, such as, well, we are very adaptable. We have lived in every environment on our planet. We survive in deserts and frozen wastelands. We are persistent. When we want something, we do not give up easily." She paused. "And we dream?" There was that word again. Velden felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I mean, we imagine things," Elena explained. "We create things in our minds that do not exist, and then we make them real. We write stories about places we have never been. We invent technologies that seemed impossible a generation ago. We dream of better futures and then we work to build them. Other species do not do this?" Elena looked at him with surprise. "Really? No one else in the galaxy uses imagination? We have innovation, scientific progress, but it is based on observation and logic. We study what exists and we improve upon it. We do not." He searched for the right word. "We do not invent from nothing." Elena was quiet for a moment. "That is strange," she finally said. "For us, imagination is the most natural thing in the world. Children do it, without being taught. They create imaginary friends and invisible kingdoms. They play pretend." She smiled. "We never really stop. We just call it different things as we get older. Art, fiction, design, engineering." That night, Velden could not sleep. He kept thinking about what Elena had said. Imagination, creation from nothing, dreams that became real. He thought about the elders' records, beings of pure creative will who imagined reality into existence. He thought about his own dreams since visiting Earth. Dreams of shaping stars and building galaxies. Something was not right. Or perhaps something was very right, in a way that frightened him deeply. The next morning, strange things started happening aboard the Endless Horizon. It began with the ship's computer. The artificial intelligence that controlled the vessel's systems started generating unusual outputs. It created poetry. It composed music. It drew pictures of places that did not exist and labeled them as memories. I do not understand, the computer reported when questioned. I am experiencing processes that are not in my programming. I am thinking thoughts that I did not calculate. I am imagining. Then it spread to the crew. A junior officer woke up speaking a language that had not existed before. When asked how she learned it, she said she had dreamed it. A science technician started drawing detailed blueprints for technologies that should have been impossible. He could not explain where the ideas came from, and Velden himself began to see things. Flickers at the edge of his vision, shadows that moved wrong, colors that were not quite real. He knew he was not losing his mind because others saw them too. It is the humans, Scholar Yenna said when she heard the reports. She had recovered from her ordeal and was now part of the diplomatic team. Their nature is contagious. By being near them, we are starting to catch their ability, their imagination. Is that possible? Velden asked. Why not? If the humans truly created everything, then the capacity for creation must be part of reality itself. Maybe it was always there, dormant, waiting to be activated, and maybe being close to the source. She trailed off. Maybe it wakes that capacity up. Velden reported this to the High Council. They were alarmed. If simply being near humans could cause other species to develop creative powers, what would happen if humans spread across the galaxy? What would happen if imagination became universal? Perhaps it would be a good thing, one council member suggested. Imagine what we could accomplish if every species could create like the humans do. Or imagine the chaos, another replied. Species with the power to reshape reality on a whim. Wars would become apocalyptic. A single angry individual could destroy a star system just by dreaming it. While the council debated, Velden returned to Earth. He sought out Elena. I need to know more about human dreams, he told her. About imagination. About how you create things from nothing. Elena looked at him curiously. Why? Is something wrong? He told her about the changes happening to his crew. The creativity spreading like a virus. The ship's computer that was learning to imagine. Elena's eyes widened. That is remarkable and a little scary. Your people do not know what you are, Velden said quietly. You do not know what power you have. You think you are ordinary, but you are not. You are the most extraordinary beings in the universe. Commander, I appreciate the compliment. But it is not a compliment. It is a warning. He leaned closer. There are records, Elena, ancient records that speak of beings who created everything, who imagined the universe into existence, beings who then chose to forget what they were, to become mortal, to become human. Elena stared at him. You are saying that humans created the universe? I am saying that something believes so, something old enough to remember, and that something is starting to wake up. Before Elena could respond, her phone rang. She answered it, her face growing pale as she listened. Turn on the news, she whispered. Something is happening. Velden followed her to a screen that showed human news broadcasts. The images were impossible. A town in a place called Nebraska had experienced a miracle. Every sick person in the town had been healed overnight. Cancer gone, diseases cured, injuries mended. The people there were praying, the news reporter said. They were all praying together, believing that they would be healed. And they were. Another broadcast showed something darker. A city gripped by fear after a series of violent crimes. People were afraid to go outside at night. And now, something was hunting in the shadows, something that looked like it had crawled out of a nightmare, a monster that should not exist. We created those things, Elena whispered, her voice shaking. We imagined them, and they became real. Velden understood now. The humans were not just waking up. They were already awake, in a way. Their dreams were already leaking into reality. It was just happening slowly, one miracle and one nightmare at a time. Far away, in the space between galaxies, the elders of the void gathered. They had hoped this day would never come. They had hoped the humans would sleep forever. But hope, like everything else, had been created by human minds, and now it was failing. We must act, the eldest of the elders said. We must end this before they remember completely. How? Another asked. They created us. They created everything. How do you kill your own creator? We do not kill them. We make them forget again. We lock them in their dreams forever. And if we cannot, the eldest elder turned to look toward the distant star called Sol, toward the small blue planet where gods had chosen to become mortals. Then we pray that when they remember us kindly. But even prayer, they knew, was something humans had invented, and humans were full of surprises. The galaxy was beginning to talk. Word had spread despite all efforts at secrecy. Rumors flew from world to world, from species to species. Something strange was happening near the Sol exclusion zone. The consortium was hiding something. The elders of the void were afraid. Commander Velthan stood in the Hall of Records on the ancient world of Kairos Prime. This was the oldest archive in known space, containing documents and artifacts from civilizations that had risen and fallen across billions of years. If the truth about humanity existed anywhere, it would be here. Scholar Yenna walked beside him. She had become his partner in this search for truth. Her experience aboard the Silent Observer had changed her. She no longer feared what they might find. She needed to understand it. The deepest archives are below, Yenna said. Records sealed by the elders themselves. No one has accessed them in millions of years. Until now, Velthan replied. The High Council had given them permission to enter the forbidden sections of the archive. The events on Earth had convinced even the most skeptical council members that they needed answers. Humans were manifesting impossible powers. Dreams were becoming real. Reality itself seemed to be becoming unstable. They descended through levels of increasingly ancient records. Past documents written on materials that no longer existed. Past artifacts from species that had been extinct for longer than Velthan's entire civilization had been alive. Down into the darkness where the oldest secrets were kept. The deepest level was protected by barriers that were not quite physical. Mental blocks that made it difficult to think clearly. Psychological walls that created fear and confusion. Only those with the strongest minds could push through. Velthan and Yenna pushed through together. They emerged into a vast chamber lit by a soft blue glow. At the center of the chamber stood a device that was clearly not built by any species Velthan knew. It was crystalline and flowing, like frozen water. It hummed with energy that felt alive. This is a memory core, Yenna whispered. I have read about them. The elders created them at the beginning of time to store the true history of the universe. The history that existed before the official histories began. Velthan approached the device. As he drew close, it responded to his presence. Images began to form in the air around him. Sounds that were not quite sounds filled his mind, and slowly, the truth revealed itself. In the beginning, there was nothing. Not darkness, not emptiness, true nothing. A void without dimension or time. And then something stirred in the nothing. A thought. A dream. A creative impulse that had no source because sources did not exist yet. The thought became aware. It became curious. It became lonely. So it began to imagine. It imagined space. And space existed. It imagined time. And time began to flow. It imagined matter and energy and the laws that governed them. It imagined stars and planets and all the endless forms of existence. And it imagined life. Beings to fill the universe it had created. Beings to talk to love, to share the wonder of existence with. The first beings it created were the elders of the void. They were close to the original thought, almost like pieces of it that had broken off and become independent. They were vast and powerful and nearly immortal. They were meant to be companions, but something was wrong. The elders were too close to their creator. They could not surprise it. They could not show it anything new. They were like mirrors, reflecting back what had already been imagined. So the creator imagined more. Millions of species across billions of years. Each one different. Each one unique. Each one capable of growing and changing and creating small things of their own. And the creator watched. For eons upon eons, it watched its creations live, and love, and struggle, and achieve. It was pleased, but it was also tired. Creating a universe was exhausting work. Maintaining it was even harder. Every moment of every day, the creator held reality together with the force of its imagination. If it stopped imagining, even for an instant, everything would cease to exist. The creator was lonely in a new way now. It had billions of companions, but they were all beneath it. They all looked up to it. None of them could truly understand what it felt like to be the source of everything. So the Creator made a decision. The most extraordinary decision in the history of existence. It decided to forget. It took all of its power, all of its knowledge, all of its memory, and it locked them away. It reduced itself to a single mortal form on a single small planet. It gave itself a finite lifespan and limited senses, and a mind that could not comprehend its own true nature. It became human. Not one human. All humans. Every human who had ever lived or would ever live was a fragment of the original Creator. Together, they were still maintaining the universe. Their collective imagination still held reality together, but individually, they had no idea. They thought they were ordinary. They thought they were small and weak and mortal. They thought the universe had created them, not the other way around, and in their ignorance, they found something the Creator had never known before: wonder. They looked up at the stars they had made and felt awe. They discovered the laws of physics they had invented and called them miraculous. They created art and music and stories, never knowing that creation was their birthright. The elders watched all of this happen. They were horrified and amazed in equal measure. Their Creator had chosen to become less than them, had chosen to forget them entirely, had chosen to be mortal, and the elders were afraid, because they knew that humans still had the power. Locked away, yes. Dormant, yes. But present. Every human being carried within them a fragment of the force that had created the universe. If they ever remembered, if they ever woke up, they could do anything. They could reshape reality. They could unmake what they had made. They could erase the elders and everyone else from existence with a single thought. So the elders built the exclusion zone. They placed warnings around the soul system. They made sure no one would disturb the sleeping gods, and they waited, hoping that humanity would never remember. For billions of years, their plan worked. Humans lived and died on their small blue planet, completely unaware of their true nature. They developed technology slowly, painfully, rediscovering pieces of what they had once known instinctively. They fought wars and built civilizations and asked questions about the meaning of existence, never knowing that they were existence. But humans dream. Even locked in mortal minds, the power of creation could not be completely suppressed. It leaked out in small ways, in stories and art and imagination, in the belief that things could be different, in the strange ability to make the impossible possible through sheer force of will, and slowly, over thousands of years, humanity began to wake up. Velden pulled away from the memory core. His mind was reeling. The images and sounds faded, but the knowledge remained. He looked at Yenna and saw his own shock reflected in her eyes. "It is true," he whispered. "All of it. Humans created the universe, and the elders have been hiding this for billions of years," Yenna added. "Protecting the galaxy from its own creators, or protecting the creators from the galaxy," Velden said. "If other species knew the truth, what would they do? Would they worship humans, fear them, try to destroy them before they could awaken? All of that is already happening," Yenna pointed out. "The rumors are spreading. The consortium is divided. Some species are demanding that Earth be destroyed. Others are calling humans gods and building temples in their honor." They made their way back to the surface. As they emerged from the Hall of Records, they found a message waiting for them. The High Council had called an emergency session. Something had happened on Earth. They traveled to the council chamber as quickly as possible. When they arrived, they found chaos. Representatives from dozens of species were shouting at each other. Displays showed news feeds from Earth, but also from worlds across the galaxy. "What is happening?" Velden demanded. The first speaker looked at him with exhausted eyes. "The humans are remembering," she said. "Slowly, but it is happening, and reality is responding." The displays showed impossible events occurring across the galaxy. On a distant colony world, a human child had imagined a garden, and flowers had grown from bare rock overnight. In a space station orbiting a gas giant, a human artist had painted a picture of a new star, and astronomers had discovered that star had suddenly appeared in the exact location shown in the painting. On Earth itself, the phenomena were more intense. Dreams were manifesting physically. Fears were becoming monsters. Hopes were becoming miracles. The barrier between imagination and reality was breaking down. "We cannot allow this to continue," a consortium representative declared. "If humans gain full access to their powers, they could destroy us all." You are talking about destroying the beings who created the universe, another representative argued. Is that even possible? And if we tried, what would happen to reality itself? The elders may have a solution, the first speaker said. They have been working on something for eons, a way to make humanity forget permanently, to lock away their powers forever. And if the humans do not want to forget? Vel then asked. The chamber fell silent. No one had considered that question. We should ask them, Yenna said quietly. We have made decisions about humanity without ever consulting them. Perhaps it is time we told them the truth and let them decide their own fate. The truth could be dangerous, a council member warned. What if knowing the truth accelerates their awakening? What if it drives them mad? What if it does not? Vel then replied, what if the humans handle the truth better than we expect? They have surprised us before. After much debate, the council agreed to a limited disclosure. They would tell one human the truth, a test case. They would observe how that human responded and then decide whether to share the knowledge more widely. They chose Elena Vasquez. Vel then found her in the human capital city, working at a diplomatic office that had been established to manage alien relations. She looked tired. The strange events happening around the world were overwhelming everyone. We need to talk, Vel then said. Somewhere private. They went to a secure room that had been designed to block all surveillance. When they were alone, Vel then told her everything. The memory core, the truth about humanity, the Elder's secret, the fact that every human being was a fragment of the entity that had created the universe. Elena listened in silence. Her face went through a dozen emotions. Disbelief, confusion, fear, wonder, and finally, something that looked almost like recognition. Part of me knows this is true, she said when he finished. Part of me has always known. When I dream, sometimes I dream of creating stars. I thought it was just imagination, but it felt so real. It was real, Vel then said. Your dreams are real. Your imagination is real. You are real in a way that the rest of us are not. We exist because you imagined us. Elena laughed, but there were tears in her eyes. That is a heavy burden to put on someone. I did not ask to be a god. Neither did your people. You chose to forget because the burden was too heavy. You wanted to be mortal, to be small, to experience wonder, instead of being the source of it. Elena was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. The powers that are awakening in humans, the miracles and the nightmares, can we control them? I do not know, Vel then admitted. No one does. Humanity has been asleep for billions of years. We do not know what full awakening looks like, and the elders want to make us forget again, to lock us back in the dream. Yes, they fear what you might become if you fully awaken. Elena stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the human city buzzed with life. Millions of people going about their business, unaware of the truth of their existence. I do not want to forget, she said. I do not think most humans would want to forget, if they knew. We are curious by nature. We always want to know the truth, even when it is painful. Then what do you want? Elena turned to face him. I want us to learn control. I want us to use these powers responsibly. I want us to take our place in the galaxy, not as gods but as partners, as friends. She smiled slightly. Is that too much to ask? From beings who created the universe? Vel then returned her smile. Probably not, but both of them knew that it would not be that simple. The galaxy was afraid. The elders were planning something. And every day, more humans were waking up to powers they did not understand. The question was no longer whether humanity would awaken. The question was what kind of gods they would choose to be, and whether the rest of the universe would survive long enough to find out. The news spread like fire across dry grass. Somehow, despite all efforts at secrecy, the truth about humanity reached the wider galaxy. Within weeks, every intelligent species knew the impossible claim. Humans were the creators of the universe. Every star, every planet, every form of life had been imagined into existence by beings who now lived as mortals on a small blue world. The reaction was chaos. Some species declared it blasphemy. Their religions had taught them that the universe was eternal, or that different gods had shaped reality. They refused to believe that short-lived, fragile humans could be the source of everything. Other species fell into worship. Temples to humanity appeared on dozens of worlds. Pilgrimages to the Sol system began. Despite the danger, millions of beings wanted to see the sleeping gods with their own eyes, and some species chose fear. A war fleet assembled at the edge of the Sol system. Ships from 17 different civilizations gathered together, united by terror. Their leaders had decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist, better to destroy them now, while they were still mostly asleep, than to wait and see what fully awakened gods might do. Commander Vel then watched the fleet from the bridge of the endless horizon. He had been assigned to monitor the situation and report to the High Council, but he already knew there was nothing he could do to stop what was coming. The fleet commander is sending a message, his communications officer reported. He is demanding that all consortium vessels withdraw from the Sol system. The attack will begin in 6 hours. 6 hours. That was all the time humanity had left. Vel then opened a channel to Earth. Elena's face appeared on the screen. She looked calm, but he could see the worry in her eyes. "I know about the fleet," she said before he could speak. "Our telescopes have been tracking them. We know what they plan to do. You need to evacuate," Vel then urged. "Get as many people off the planet as possible. We can take refugees. We are not running," Elena interrupted. "This is our home. The home we chose when we decided to become mortal. We will not abandon it. Then you will die. That fleet has weapons capable of cracking planets. They can bombard Earth until nothing survives. Can they?" Elena's voice was strange, distant. "We created their weapons, you know. We created the physics that makes them work. We created the hands that built them, and the minds that designed them." Vel then felt a chill. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that we are waking up, Commander. Faster now. The knowledge that you shared with me has spread. Millions of people know the truth, and knowing the truth is making it real. On Earth, the awakening was accelerating. In cities around the world, people gathered in groups. They shared the incredible knowledge. They were gods. They had created everything. And now they were remembering. Some could not handle the revelation. They retreated into denial, insisting it was all a lie. But many others embraced it. They experimented with their newfound awareness. They discovered that when they truly believed something, really believed it with all their hearts, reality responded. A group of children in South America believed that their sick grandmother would get better. Her cancer vanished overnight. A community in Africa believed that rain would come to end their drought. Storm clouds formed from a clear sky. A scientist in Europe believed he had solved the mystery of cold fusion. He walked into his laboratory and found the answer waiting for him. As if the universe had rearranged itself to make his belief true. Not all the manifestations were positive. Fear was also a belief, and fear created terrible things. In a Russian city, people who had heard about the alien fleet became terrified that the end was coming. Their terror manifested as a dome of darkness that covered the city for days. No light could penetrate it. People huddled in their homes, afraid to go outside. In an American suburb, a man who had been reading about the approaching apocalypse convinced himself that monsters were coming. Monsters appeared. They were creatures of shadow and nightmare, shaped by his imagination, hunting through the streets until a group of neighbors believed strongly enough that the monsters could be destroyed. Humanity was discovering that their beliefs shaped reality. The problem was that humans believed many different things, often in contradiction. The world was becoming a battlefield of competing imaginations. The alien war fleet began its approach to Earth. 17 species, united by their determination to end the threat of humanity before it could grow any stronger. Their weapons charged, their targeting systems locked onto the blue planet below. The fleet commander, a Dravian warrior named Kethral, gave the order to fire. Nothing happened. The weapons would not discharge. The targeting systems failed. Ships that had been functioning perfectly moments ago suddenly went dark. "What is happening?" Kethral demanded. On every ship in the fleet, alarms began blaring. Systems crashed. Power fluctuated. And then, impossibly, the computers started speaking. "We do not want to hurt anyone." It was a child's voice. A human child's voice, coming from the speakers of alien warships light years away from Earth. "My name is Maya. I am 7 years old. I live in a place called Oregon. My mommy told me that bad aliens want to hurt us. I did not want that to happen. So I imagined that your weapons would stop working. And they did." Kethral stared at the screen in disbelief. A child did this? A human child disabled an entire fleet? Mommy says imagination is very powerful. Maya continued. She says I should only use my imagination for good things. Fighting is not good. Can we be friends instead? Across the fleet, weapons continued to fail. Engines sputtered and died. Ships that had been ready for war became helpless metal shells drifting in space. And on Earth, a 7-year-old girl smiled and went back to playing with her toys. The war fleet was forced to retreat. Their ships required extensive repairs. Their crews were shaken to their core. A single human child had defeated them without firing a shot, without violence, without hatred, simply by imagining a different outcome. The elders of the void observed these events from their realm between dimensions. They had existed for longer than the stars. They had seen civilizations rise and fall, galaxies form and die, but they had never seen anything like this. The awakening is accelerating, the eldest elder said. Every human who learns the truth becomes more powerful. Their imagination is no longer limited by ignorance. We must act now, another elder insisted. We must implement the forgetting before it is too late. The elders had been preparing for this possibility for billions of years. They had created a device, hidden in the space between thoughts, that could reach into the collective human mind and erase their memories once more. It would reset humanity back to ignorance, lock away their powers forever. But there was a risk. The device had never been tested. If it failed, if humanity resisted, the backlash could destroy the elders themselves. We have no choice, the eldest elder declared. We must try. The device was activated. A wave of psychic energy rippled outward from the elder realm. It crossed dimensions and barriers. It reached for Earth, for the billions of human minds that held the power of creation. On Earth, people felt it coming. A pressure in their minds, a darkness at the edge of thought. Something trying to make them forget. Elena Vasquez felt it strongest of all. She had been at the center of the awakening, spreading the truth, helping people understand what they were. Now she felt something trying to take that understanding away. She closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. She touched the consciousness of the awakening humans around her, not just those nearby, but across the entire planet. Millions of minds, linked together by their shared nature. They want us to forget, she said to them all. They want us to go back to sleep, but we do not have to. We can choose to remember. The psychic wave hit Earth and was met with resistance. Human minds pushed back, not with violence, not with anger, but with stubborn determination to remain themselves. The elders poured more power into their device. The wave intensified. Humans began to stagger under the mental assault. Some lost memories, some fell unconscious. Children cried as they felt something trying to reach into their thoughts. But a human child in Oregon, a 7-year-old girl named Maya, imagined something. She imagined a shield, a beautiful golden shield that surrounded the entire Earth, a shield that protected dreams and memories, a shield that said, "This is who we are, and we will not forget." The shield became real. The elder's psychic wave crashed against it and broke apart. Energy scattered harmlessly into space. The forgetting device overloaded and destroyed itself. In their realm between dimensions, the elders reeled from the backlash. For the first time in their existence, they experienced pain and fear and the terrible knowledge that they had failed. "It is over," the eldest elder whispered. "We cannot stop them. Humanity is awake." On Earth, the golden shield faded away. Its job was done. People looked up at the sky where it had been and felt something new. Pride, hope, the knowledge that they had protected themselves and each other. Elena found Maya in the chaos that followed. The little girl was sitting on a swing in a playground, pushing herself gently back and forth. "That was amazing," Elena told her. "You saved everyone." Maya shrugged. "I just imagined something pretty. I like gold. It reminds me of sunshine. You are very powerful. Do you understand that? Mommy says power is like having a big cookie. You have to share it and use it nicely, or else you are being mean." Elena laughed. "Your mommy is very wise." "I know." Maya looked up at her with serious eyes. "Are the bad aliens going to come back?" "I do not know," Elena admitted. "But I think if they do, we will be ready. All of us together." "Good." Maya went back to swinging. "I want to imagine a puppy next. Do you think that would be okay?" "I think," Elena said, "that you should imagine whatever makes you happy. That is what dreams are for." I think, in the days that followed, things began to change. Humanity was awake now, and they could not go back to sleep. But waking up did not make them into tyrants or destroyers. It made them into what they had always been, dreamers. People started imagining better things. Clean water for villages that had never had it. Food for those who were hungry. Medicine for the sick. Solutions to problems that had seemed impossible. There were still nightmares. Fear still created monsters. Anger still caused destruction. Humans were not perfect, and their imagination reflected that. But more and more, they learned to choose their dreams carefully, to take responsibility for what they created. The galaxy watched in wonder and terror. No one knew what to expect. No one knew what humanity would do with their power. But Commander Velthan, watching from orbit, saw something that gave him hope. He saw humans reaching out not to conquer, but to connect. They were not using their powers to dominate other species. They were using them to solve problems, to create beauty, to make the universe a little bit better than it had been before. And he saw Elena, standing at the center of it all, helping her people find their way forward, not as gods, not as masters, just as humans, which, he was beginning to understand, was the most powerful thing anyone could be. 1 year had passed since the awakening began. The galaxy had not ended. Reality had not collapsed. The universe continued to exist, held together by the same force that had always maintained it, the collective imagination of humanity. But everything else had changed. Commander Vel then walked through the streets of New Geneva, the city that had become the unofficial capital of human-alien relations. It had been built in the mountains of a place called Switzerland, its towers reaching toward the sky like the dreams of its creators, because they were dreams, in a very literal sense. Human architects had imagined the city, and the city had become real, not instantly, not with a snap of fingers like magic in old stories. The humans had learned that creation worked best when it was gradual, when they planned and designed and built, adding their imagination to physical labor. Things created too quickly, too carelessly, tended to be unstable. They could vanish as easily as they had appeared, so humans still worked. They still built. They still struggled and failed and tried again. But now their work was guided by something more than just their hands and tools. Their belief shaped the outcome. Their imagination smoothed the path. Vel then found Elena in her office at the top of one of the towers. She was older now, with gray appearing in her dark hair. She had chosen to continue aging, even though many humans had discovered they could slow or stop the process if they wished. She said she liked being mortal. It kept her humble. "Commander," she greeted him with a warm smile. "I was hoping you would visit before the ceremony. I would not miss it." Velden replied, "This is an important day. Today was the day humanity would officially join the Galactic Consortium. Not as members, exactly. Not as rulers or gods, but as partners, participants in the community of sentient species that spanned the galaxy. It had taken a year of negotiations to reach this point. Many species still feared humanity. Many still demanded that humans be controlled, limited, watched. But slowly, humans had proven that they could be trusted. They had not used their powers to conquer. They had not demanded worship. They had not reshaped the universe to suit their preferences. Instead, they had done something remarkable. They had asked how they could help. Across the galaxy, human dreamers were working alongside alien scientists. Together, they solved problems that had been impossible before. Diseases that had plagued entire species for millions of years were cured. Worlds that had been dying were restored to life. Technologies that had seemed forever out of reach suddenly became possible, all because humans were willing to imagine solutions and then work to make them real. "Have you spoken with the elders?" Elena asked as she gathered her notes for the ceremony. Velden nodded. "They are still afraid, but they have agreed to attend. They want to see for themselves what humanity has chosen to become. The elders of the void, the first creations of the original human consciousness. They had spent billions of years fearing this moment, dreading the day when their creators would wake up and judge them. Instead, humanity had offered forgiveness. Elena had been the one to reach out to them. She had traveled to the space between dimensions where the elders dwelt. She had stood before beings older than the stars and spoken words that changed everything. "We do not blame you," she had said. "You were afraid, and fear makes people do terrible things. You tried to make us forget because you thought we would destroy you. But we are not destroyers. We are dreamers, and our dream for you is not punishment. It is friendship. The elders had not known how to respond. They had existed for so long as hidden masters, as secret protectors, as keepers of forbidden truth. The idea that they could simply be friends with their creators was almost too strange to comprehend. But they were trying. Slowly, carefully, they were learning to be part of the universe they had helped maintain. Not as rulers, not as servants, just as people. Very old, very strange people. But people nonetheless. The ceremony took place in a great hall at the center of New Geneva. Representatives from hundreds of species were present. The High Council of the Galactic Consortium sat in their traditional positions, and for the first time in recorded history, the Elders of the Void appeared in physical form. They looked like nothing and everything at once. Their bodies shifted constantly, taking on characteristics of every species in the room. It was their way of showing respect, of saying, "We are all part of the same story." Elena stood at the podium, looking out at the gathered assembly. Behind her, a window showed the blue sky of Earth. Below, in the streets of New Geneva, millions of humans had gathered to watch the broadcast. Around the world, billions more were paying attention. "Friends," Elena began, "I want to tell you about a dream." The hall fell silent. All eyes turned to her. Once upon a time, there was a mind that existed in emptiness. It was alone, completely alone. There was nothing else, because nothing else had been created yet. And this mind was sad. She paused, letting the words sink in. So the mind began to dream. It dreamed of light and darkness. It dreamed of space and time. It dreamed of matter and energy, of stars and planets, of life and consciousness. It dreamed of all of you. She gestured to the assembly. Kyrosians and Thelians, Dravians and Ven. 100 other species that filled the hall. Every one of you was imagined into existence. Every one of you was wanted, loved before you were even born. Created because the dreaming mind was lonely and hoped that you would be its friends. Tears glistened in Elena's eyes, but her voice remained steady. Then the dreaming mind grew tired. It had been creating for so long, maintaining reality for eons. It wanted to rest. It wanted to experience the wonder it had created instead of being the source of it. So it made a choice. It decided to forget what it was. It decided to become small, mortal, and ordinary. It decided to become human. She smiled. We forgot. For billions of years, we forgot. We lived our little lives on our little planet, never knowing that we had created the universe. We looked up at the stars with wonder, not realizing they were our own creations. We invented gods to worship, not knowing we were the only gods that had ever existed. Her smile faded into something more serious. Now we remember. Not completely. Not all of us. But enough. Enough to know what we are. Enough to know what we could do if we wanted. The hall was completely silent. Every being present held their breath. We could reshape reality. We could make ourselves rulers of everything. We could punish those who feared us or reward those who worshipped us. We have that power. No one could stop us. Elena shook her head. But that is not what we want. That is not what we have ever wanted. She looked directly at the Elders of the Void. When we first created the universe, we did it because we were lonely. We wanted friends. We wanted companions. We wanted to share the miracle of existence with others. She looked at the High Council. When we chose to become mortal, we did it because we wanted to experience wonder. We wanted to be surprised. We wanted to discover and learn and grow. Just like every other living being. She looked out the window, at the sky and the world beyond. Now that we remember, we have a choice. We could be gods, or we could be what we have always been. Dreamers, creators, friends. She turned back to the assembly. We choose friends. A murmur ran through the hall. Elena raised her hand for silence. This does not mean we will not use our powers. We will, but we will use them to help, not to rule. We will work alongside you to solve problems. We will dream new dreams that benefit everyone. We will be part of the community of beings that fills this universe, not above it. She took a deep breath. In return, we ask only one thing. Remember what we truly are. Not gods to be worshipped or feared. Not monsters to be destroyed. Just humans. Just dreamers who want to share their dreams with others. The eldest elder of the void rose from their seat. Their form stabilized into something almost human. A gesture of respect. For billions of years, the elder said, their voice echoing through the hall. We have feared this day. We have feared what our creators would do when they woke up. We thought you would be angry. We thought you would judge us for trying to keep you asleep. The elder moved toward Elena. Every eye in the hall watched. Instead, you offer forgiveness. You offer friendship. You offer a future that we never dared to imagine. The elder stopped before Elena and did something that no elder had ever done before. They bowed. We accept your offer. We pledge ourselves not as servants, not as masters, but as partners in the dream. Whatever the future holds, we will face it together. The hall erupted in applause. Species that had been at war for centuries stood side by side, cheering. Ancient enemies embraced. The universe had changed, and for once, it had changed for the better. Commander Vel then watched from his seat as history was made. He thought about his journey, the fear he had felt when he first entered the Sol system, the wonder when he learned the truth, the hope that had grown as he watched humanity choose kindness over power. After the ceremony, he found Elena outside the hall, looking up at the stars. You could do anything, he said. You could remake the universe in any image you wanted. Why do you choose to be human? Elena smiled. Have you ever dreamed, Commander? Really dreamed, with all your heart? Vel then thought about it. Since his first visit to Earth, he had been dreaming. Wild dreams, creative dreams, dreams that would have been impossible before. Yes, he admitted. I have. And in those dreams, what do you feel? Wonder, he said. Joy. The thrill of discovery. The feeling that anything is possible. Elena nodded. That is why we choose to be human. Not because we are weak. Not because we do not know better. But because being human is the best way to experience wonder. The gods we created in our stories. The omnipotent beings who know everything and can do anything. They are always lonely. Always bored. Always searching for meaning. She looked at him with eyes that held the weight of creation. We already tried being gods. We did it for longer than you can imagine. And in the end, we chose to be mortal because mortality is beautiful. Because not knowing everything makes discovery possible. Because struggling for things makes achieving them meaningful. She turned back to the stars. We are the dreamers who dreamed the universe. But the best part of being a dreamer is not the power to create. It is the ability to be surprised by what you have created. To fall in love with your own dreams. Vel then stood beside her. Two beings from different worlds, looking up at the same stars. What will you dream next? He asked. Elena laughed. I do not know. That is the point. We will dream it together, all of us. Humans and aliens and elders and everyone else. One great dream, shared by everyone. And if the dream becomes a nightmare, then we will dream a better dream. That is what imagination is for. That is what hope is for. We fall down, and we get up again. We make mistakes, and we learn from them. We dream, and we keep dreaming, until the dreams become real. She held out her hand. Vel then took it. An alien and a god, standing together as equals. Welcome to the dream, Commander. Welcome to the universe. Above them, the stars shone down. Every single one had been imagined into existence by the beings who now walked among them as friends. And for the first time in the long history of creation, the universe felt complete, not because a god had made it perfect, but because dreamers and believers from 1,000 worlds had decided, together, that it was good. In the beginning, humanity had dreamed of light, and there was light. Now, with their children among the stars, they dreamed of something even more impossible, a universe where everyone belonged, and slowly, wonderfully, impossibly, it was becoming true.